The Great Pyramid of Giza aligns with true north to within a fraction of a degree. This video reveals the lost methods ancient engineers used to achieve such impossible precision without any modern tools. You will learn how civilizations across the world transformed simple ropes, buckets of water, and observations of the stars into a precise science for aligning their greatest monuments. How did a vertical pole and its shadow point the way to perfect north? What secret knowledge allowed builders to lay out city grids spanning kilometers with nothing but pegs and cord? We will answer these mysteries by exploring the ingenious blend of astronomy, geometry, and human ingenuity that connected Earth to the heavens. What does it say about us that we are still unraveling the brilliance of those who came before? That alignment to true north was no accident of construction. It was the opening statement of a much larger conversation. For the builders of antiquity, every stone they laid was a word in a dialogue with the universe itself. Their monuments were not just shelters or tombs, they were permanent prayers etched into the landscape, designed to mirror the perfect, unchanging order they observed in the night sky. This was architecture as a sacred act, a way to bring the harmony of the heavens down to earth. To understand their methods, we must first understand their mindset. Precision was not merely for structural integrity, it was a spiritual imperative. A temple aligned to the rising sun on the equinox was not just telling time, it was capturing a moment of cosmic balance, inviting divine energy into the human realm. In ancient Egypt, the pyramid sides faced the cardinal directions to guide the pharaoh's soul to the eternal northern stars. In Mesoamerica, the stepped pyramids of Teotihuacan were arranged to mirror specific constellations. Across oceans and continents, we find this same profound intention, a shared human impulse to build our greatest works in concert with the cosmos. This foundational belief that a structure must be in harmony with celestial and terrestrial forces transformed the act of measurement from a simple chore into a ritual of profound importance. It meant that the engineer was also a priest, the surveyor also an astronomer. The tools they would develop, therefore, were not just instruments of geometry, but extensions of this sacred worldview. They were the physical means to enact a celestial vision. This celestial compass began with a simple, powerful observation. The sun does not rise and set in the same place every day. Over the course of a year, its rising point along the horizon marches steadily northward, then pauses and retreats southward. The 2 days where it pauses, the solstices, mark the furthest extremes of its journey. Midway between these 2 points lies the equinox, when day and night are of equal length and the sun rises due east and sets due west. By carefully marking the sunrise positions at the solstices, an ancient surveyor could find the exact midpoint between them, establishing a perfect east-west line. From that, a perpendicular line gave them true north and south. It was a method of breathtaking elegance, using time and patience to translate the sun's grand, slow dance into a permanent line on the ground. The Egyptians refined this further with the stars. They identified a small group of stars that never set, circling endlessly around the north celestial pole. By observing 2 specific stars as one rose and the other set, they could bisect the angle between them to pinpoint a north-south axis. This was not a quick task. It required nights of vigil, careful notching of alignment rods, and a deep, generational knowledge passed from astronomer to engineer. But the result was a bearing so true it has endured for millennia. This astronomical alignment was more than technical, it was a form of communion. To build a temple aligned to the equinox sun was to literally capture that moment of cosmic balance in stone, ensuring the structure would be recharged with that harmonious energy every single year. The precision served a dual purpose. It created a stable, enduring building, and it wove that building into the very fabric of time and the heavens. So with a true north-south line established by the stars and an east-west line from the sun, the ancient engineers had their primary coordinates. But how did they translate those celestial lines, etched in light and shadow, into the massive physical footprint of a pyramid or the sprawling plan of a sacred city? The answer lies in a deceptively simple tool that turned geometry into a force that could shape continents. The rope was their pencil, and the earth itself was the parchment. With a true north line established by the stars, the ancient engineers' next task was to translate that single, perfect axis into the full, geometric blueprint of a city or temple. This was the moment celestial observation met terrestrial craftsmanship, and it was achieved not with advanced machinery, but with the profound application of simple geometry. The foundational tool for this was a length of cord made from plant fibers or animal sinew, meticulously measured and treated to resist stretching. This humble rope became the ultimate precision instrument. When pulled taut between two stakes, it defined a perfectly straight line that could extend across an entire construction site. To ensure it was level, builders would use a simple water-filled trench as a reference, knowing the water's surface always finds true level. With a straight line and a level reference, they had the two-dimensional plane upon which to build their vision. But a straight line is only the beginning. To create the right angles essential for walls, courtyards, and pyramids, they employed a geometric secret known across the ancient world. Take a cord and tie 12 equally spaced knots along its length. Stake one knot at the starting corner, pull the cord taut along your baseline, and stake the fourth knot. Now swing the loose end of the cord, and where the seventh knot meets the ground, you have just created a perfect right angle. This is the 3-4-5 triangle, a Pythagorean triple that guarantees a square corner, a principle understood and used for millennia before the Greek philosopher ever gave it his name. It was geometry made physical, a theorem you could hold in your hands and stamp into the dust. From this perfect right angle, the entire grid of a structure could unfold. By repeatedly measuring out identical chord lengths and checking corners with the 3-4-5 method, a team could lay out a perfectly square foundation or an immense rectangular plaza with astonishing accuracy. For more complex layouts involving circles or arcs, they would use a central stake and a rotating cord as a giant compass, inscribing massive circles into the earth. By bisecting those arcs with more chords, they could derive additional angles and alignments. This rope and peg methodology was deceptively powerful. It was scalable, portable, and required no technology beyond human skill and careful observation. It demonstrates a core truth about these ancient builders. Their sophistication was not in the complexity of their tools, but in the depth of their understanding. They mastered the fundamental principles of shape and space, then applied them with a consistency and scale that still defies belief. With this geometric grid established on the ground, the stage was finally set for the most audacious act of all, moving from the plan inscribed in dust to the mountain of stone that would define the skyline for ages. The Great Pyramid's shadow, however, was cast long before the first stone was ever cut. This alignment to the cardinal directions was not a final flourish, but the very first act of construction, a ceremony of measurement that locked the monument's destiny to the cosmos. Historians believe the Egyptians likely employed a method known today as the Indian circle. At the heart of this technique was a simple vertical rod, a gnomon, planted firmly in a wide, leveled area of desert. On the day of the autumn equinox, when the sun rises due east and sets due west, an observer would carefully track the tip of the rod's shadow throughout the day. They would mark the shadow's position at intervals, creating a shallow, westward curving arc on the ground. By then drawing a chord through 2 points on that arc that were equidistant from the rod's base, they could establish a perfect east-west line. A second chord, stretched perpendicular to the first using the trusted 3-4-5 triangle method, would give them an unerring north-south axis. This solar method, grounded in the Earth's annual cycle, provided one path to precision. Yet other evidence points to the stars. Some researchers suggest the builders may have sighted on a pair of stars in what we call the Little Bear constellation, one rising and the other setting, using their transit to bisect the celestial pole. The truth may be a combination, a synergy of solar and stellar observation that cross-checked one result against the other over many seasons. This was not a weekend project. It represented years, perhaps generations, of patient watching, marking, and adjusting. Each slight refinement of the alignment rods, each new notch in the observation platform, was a step toward an immortal geometry. The symbolic purpose is clear, aligning the pharaoh's eternal resting place with the imperishable northern stars. But the technical achievement reveals something more, an empirical, almost scientific approach to the heavens. They were not just worshipping the lights in the sky, they were measuring them, learning their patterns, and harnessing that knowledge to impose an impossible order upon chaos. This celestial groundwork, once set, became the unshakable template for everything that followed. But a perfect line on the sand is one thing. Moving 2 million stone blocks into position atop that line is an entirely different kind of miracle. Across the ocean, under a different canopy of stars, another civilization was writing its own dialogue with the heavens in stone. In the dense jungles and high plains of Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztec engineers performed a similar feat of celestial alignment, but with a distinctive cultural signature woven into every angle. Their pyramids were not just tombs or temples, they were colossal calendars and astronomical observatories, designed to make the passage of time visible and sacred. The movement of the Sun, the planet Venus, and the Pleiades star cluster were not abstract concepts. They were divine actors in a cosmic drama, and the architecture was the stage upon which they performed. To align a building was to invite a god to manifest, to make the invisible forces of the universe tangibly present for all to witness. This deep integration of cosmology turned entire cities into mirrors of the sky. The Grand Plaza of Teotihuacan, with its Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon, is thought to mirror the arrangement of specific stars. The Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza has narrow windows precisely aligned to the sunset on the equinoxes and the extreme positions of Venus. The builders achieved this not with complex instruments, but by using the landscape itself as a giant surveying tool. They would establish sight lines to natural horizon markers, like a distinctive notch between two distant mountains. By observing where the sun rose or set against that notch on key days of the year, they could fix an alignment with extraordinary accuracy and then translate that line into the walls of a temple. The most breathtaking example of this celestial choreography is the Pyramid of Kukulcán at Chichen Itza. Its 4 staircases each have 91 steps, which, with the shared platform at the top, total 365, the number of days in the solar year. But its true magic is reserved for the equinoxes. As the sun sets on those 2 days of balance, the stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase. These shadows connect to stone serpent heads at the base, creating the undulating illusion of a massive feathered serpent, the deity Kukulcán, slithering down from the heavens to earth. This was not a happy accident, it was a meticulously calculated light show, an event engineered centuries in advance to unite architecture, astronomy, and mythology into a single, awe-inspiring moment. It represents the pinnacle of the ancient engineer's art, where precision in service of a spiritual vision created a legacy that still draws thousands to witness its glory every year. This pattern of using the sky as a blueprint reveals a universal human impulse, yet it finds perhaps its most mysterious and expansive expression not in towering stone, but in lines drawn upon the very skin of the earth. Yet this conversation with the cosmos was not always written in towering stone. In the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca people chose a different, more mysterious canvas, the desert floor itself. Here they etched geoglyphs so immense, their full form is only revealed from the sky, a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider with legs spanning a hillside, and vast geometric lines that run arrows straight to the horizon. This presents a profound enigma. How did ancient engineers with no ability to fly create such precise, monumental art that seems designed for a viewer in the heavens? The answer lies not in magic, but in a masterful application of the same principles we have already seen, scaled to a breathtaking degree. Researchers believe the process likely began with a small-scale model. A master artist could design a figure on a manageable plot of earth, perhaps using a grid of ropes and stakes to map out its proportions. This smaller design was then scaled up, using a larger grid system, where each square of the model corresponded to a much larger square on the desert plain. Teams would follow these coordinates, clearing the dark surface stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath, one massive grid square at a time. For the immense straight lines that stretch for kilometers, the method was elegant in its simplicity. Surveyors could have planted a series of tall wooden poles in a straight line across the valley, using the human eye to align each new pole with the two behind it, a technique that can achieve remarkable accuracy over long distances. Some theorize they may have used a basic form of theodolite, perhaps a sighting tube balanced on a tripod, or even a hanging weight to establish a true vertical reference. The purpose of these lines and figures is a subject of enduring debate. Were they astronomical calendars marking the rising of important stars or the solstice sun? Were they ritual pathways for ceremonial processions, walked by people who could only experience the design from within its lines? The truth may encompass all these ideas, a fusion of celestial observation, spiritual practice, and a profound statement of cultural identity upon the landscape. What the Nazca lines demonstrate with stunning clarity is that the drive for large-scale precision was a global phenomenon. These builders did not need an aerial view because they possessed a superior understanding of geometry and patient, systematic execution. They turned the entire desert into a sacred diagram, proving that the ancient engineer's greatest tool was not a specific instrument, but a boundless vision, meticulously plotted one careful step at a time. The impulse to mark the sun's journey was not confined to the pyramids or the desert plains. On the windswept Salisbury Plain in England, a different kind of stone scripture was being composed against the sky. Stonehenge stands as a masterclass in solar alignment, a monument where the architecture itself becomes a giant astronomical site. Its central axis is precisely oriented to frame the rising sun on the summer solstice and the setting sun on the winter solstice. This was not a vague gesture toward the east, but a specific, calculated alignment to the sun's most extreme northern and southern rising points on the horizon. To achieve this, the builders first had to establish their sacred circle. Using a long rope anchored to a central post, they could have traced a perfect ring into the chalky earth, marking the outer ditch and the ring of pits known as the Aubrey holes. But the true genius lies in the placement of specific stones. The heel stone, standing solitary outside the main circle, acts as a foresight. When viewed from the center of the monument at dawn on the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over its weathered top. The so-called slaughter stone, which once stood upright, may have framed the winter solstice sunset. How did they plot these points with such accuracy over a distance of hundreds of feet? The process likely began with decades, perhaps generations, of patient observation from nearby ridges. Each year, elders would mark the sun's furthest rising and setting points on the horizon with simple wooden posts. Over time, these markers would reveal a consistent arc, the solar limits. By averaging these observations, they could identify the exact solstitial axis. Transferring that celestial line onto the ground required the same peg and cord geometry used across the ancient world, but scaled for truly megalithic construction. They would have stretched a main alignment cord along the Solstice line, then used perpendicular cords and the 3-4-5 triangle method to position the massive sarsen stones, each weighing multiple tons. This was a communal endeavor of staggering patience, blending deep environmental knowledge with precise geometric practice. The alignment served a profound dual purpose. Ceremonially, it created a direct portal between the human community and the solar deity, a time when the power of the sun was literally channeled into the heart of the circle. Practically, it functioned as a colossal calendar, marking the turning points of the year, the times for planting, harvest, and ceremony. Stonehenge embeds the very cycle of life into the landscape, a stone reminder of time's eternal return. This mastery of long sightlines and horizon astronomy shows a deep intimacy with the local environment, a necessary step for any builder. Yet to raise a level platform for such a monument, or to keep the lintels of its great trilithons perfectly horizontal, they needed a tool even more fundamental than the cord. They needed a reference that nature itself provided, a liquid mirror that always tells the truth. While stone and cord could define angles and directions, they were powerless against the gentle, relentless curve of the earth. To build a stable temple on a hillside or a perfectly flat plaza across a valley, ancient engineers needed a reference that was universally true, a line that nature itself could not distort. They found their answer in the most humble of elements, water. In its stillness, water always finds a perfect horizontal plane, a principle that transformed a simple bucket into one of history's most precise leveling instruments. Imagine a long, shallow wooden trough filled with water, placed at one end of a construction site. By peering over its edge, a builder could sight along the water's calm surface to a distant rod marked with measurements. Any deviation in height between the 2 points became instantly visible as a misalignment with the water's line. A more portable version involved 2 identical vessels connected by a hose, the water inside each settling to exactly the same level, allowing teams to transfer a horizontal benchmark over immense distances and across any obstacle. This was the ancient water level, a tool of breathtaking simplicity and profound accuracy. The Romans mastered this technique to engineer their iconic aqueducts, ensuring those life-giving channels maintained a precise, gentle downhill slope for hundreds of miles by constantly checking their grade against water's unwavering truth. High in the Andes, the builders of Machu Picchu likely used a similar method to carve vast, level terraces into the steep mountainsides. Before a single stone was set for the royal plaza or the temple of the sun, teams would have used water-filled basins to establish a network of level points across the uneven granite bedrock. This created an invisible grid of horizontal stability, a flat stage upon which their architectural symphony could be performed. The result was not just structural integrity, but a profound aesthetic harmony. When you stand in the central courtyard of an ancient site and feel that intuitive sense of balance and peace, you are experiencing the legacy of that still water in a trough. It ensured that walls rose straight, that floors did not tilt, and that the massive lintels above doorways sat perfectly flat, distributing their colossal weight evenly. This fluid ingenuity perfectly complemented the solid geometry of ropes and triangles. Together, they provided the complete three-dimensional framework, mastering the X, Y, and Z axes of construction. With a horizontal plane secured by water and the cardinal directions locked by the stars, the builders had one more natural phenomenon to harness, one that moved with the sun and could measure what cords could not reach. A vertical pole planted firmly in the earth became a silent witness to the sun's journey. This simple gnomon, casting its ever-moving shadow, was far more than a primitive timepiece. It was a dynamic alignment tool that translated the sun's daily arc into precise geometric data on the ground. Ancient surveyors understood that the shadow's path held the secrets of direction. Throughout the day, the shadow's tip would trace a smooth, curving line. By carefully marking its position at regular intervals, they could map this arc. The most critical moment came at local noon, when the sun reached its highest point and the shadow was at its shortest, pointing directly north in the northern hemisphere. This established the meridian, the true north-south line, with astonishing accuracy. But the Gnomon's power extended beyond a single moment. On the equinoxes, when day and night are of equal length, the shadow's path is symmetrical. An arc traced from morning to afternoon could be bisected to find a perfect east-west line, cross-checking the alignment derived from the stars. Evidence suggests the vast, leveled courtyards around the Great Pyramid may have served as giant mnemonic fields. By planting a tall central pole and observing the long shadows cast across the flat limestone pavement, Egyptian astronomers could verify and refine their celestial alignments in real time, using the sun itself as their final arbiter of truth. The beauty of this method was its elegant simplicity and portability. A single surveyor with nothing but a straight pole, a set of marking pegs, and patient observation could establish the cardinal directions anywhere under the sun. It transformed a natural phenomenon, the interplay of light and obstruction, into a reliable engineering instrument. This demonstrates the core genius of these ancient techniques. They did not fight against nature's laws. They listened to them, learned their rhythms, and then applied that knowledge with meticulous consistency. The Gnomon's shadow was a silent teacher, and its lessons were written in light and geometry upon the earth. But what if the alignment of a sacred space involved more than just sight? What if the builders also listened for a signal, a resonance that told them their work was in harmony with forces beyond the visible? The stones themselves may have held another kind of conversation, one conducted not in light but in sound. Beyond the silent geometry of ropes and shadows, some ancient builders appear to have tuned their structures to the very vibrations of the earth and air. Emerging research into archaeoacoustics suggests that sound and resonance were not accidental byproducts of stone construction, but intentional elements of design, particularly in cultures that viewed the universe as a system of harmonic relationships. At the ancient underground complex known as the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, carved over 5,000 years ago, certain oval chambers possess extraordinary acoustic properties. When a deep voice chants within what is called the oracle room, the sound amplifies and resonates throughout the entire space, creating a powerful, immersive sensation that seems to vibrate within the chest of the listener. This was likely no coincidence. In a culture without written records, sound may have been a sacred technology, a way to alter consciousness, unify a community in ritual, or even communicate with what they perceived as the spirit world. The architecture itself becomes a giant instrument, its shape and dimensions carefully calculated to amplify specific frequencies from chants or drumbeats. While this sonic dimension is not a direct alignment tool for finding north, it represents a profound alignment of a different kind, the harmonizing of human ceremony with architectural form. The layout of passages and chambers could have been designed to guide and magnify sound waves, ensuring that a ritual performed in one space would be felt as much as heard throughout the complex. This idea transforms our understanding of these sites from passive containers of activity into active participants in the experience. It reminds us that ancient engineering was a holistic practice, blending the practical mathematics of load-bearing walls with the sensory and spiritual goal of creating an environment that could elevate the human spirit. The stones were placed not only to stand for millennia, but to sing, or to make the human voice sing with a power beyond its natural limits. This fusion of the tangible and the intangible, of measurable geometry with the ephemeral quality of sound, points toward a deeper principle at work, one where the very shapes they built were believed to hold inherent sacred power. The stones were not just placed, they were proportioned according to a hidden harmony. Beyond the cardinal directions, a deeper layer of alignment governed the very shape of these monuments, one written in the silent language of mathematics. This is the realm of sacred geometry, where specific ratios and proportions were not merely aesthetic choices, but were believed to reflect the fundamental order of creation itself. The Great Pyramid offers perhaps the most famous example. The ratio of its perimeter to its original height is remarkably close to 2 pi. This suggests the builders may have intentionally encoded the mathematical constant related to the circle into a square-based structure, a symbolic fusion of shapes representing the earth and the heavens. How could they achieve such a precise mathematical relationship with only ropes and stakes? The answer likely lies in the practical application of these revered ratios. A rope stretcher using a knotted cord could physically inscribe the golden ratio or other harmonic proportions directly onto the ground during the initial layout. By establishing a key measurement, say the length of one side, and then using geometric constructions with their chords to derive the pyramid's height and slope, they could bake these ideal proportions into the very blueprint. This was alignment of a different dimension, not with the horizon but with an abstract, perfect harmony. The structure became more than a building, it was a cosmological model, its proportions mirroring the perceived mathematical relationships that governed the universe. The Parthenon in Greece is another masterpiece of this principle, its facade famously designed around rectangles governed by the golden ratio, creating a visual balance that feels instinctively pleasing to the human eye. This mathematical sophistication implies something profound about the knowledge behind these projects. It was not a series of lucky guesses, but a deep, possibly esoteric understanding of number, shape, and space, cultivated and guarded over generations. This leads us to a pivotal question. How was such precise, complex knowledge preserved and transmitted in a world without textbooks or digital archives? The answer lies in the most human of institutions, the master and apprentice. Precision this profound could not be entrusted to parchment alone. The true blueprint for a pyramid existed not on papyrus, but in the practiced hands and sharp eyes of the master builder, passed from one generation to the next through the living chain of apprenticeship. This was a world where knowledge was a physical craft, learned by doing, watching, and repeating under the open sky. A young apprentice would spend years beside his teacher, not just listening to theories, but grinding pigments for sighting rods, feeling the tension of the alignment cord, and standing night-long vigils to learn the slow dance of the circumpolar stars. The methods for finding true north or laying a perfect square were embedded in ritualized routines and chanted sequences, memorized until they became as instinctual as breathing. This oral and practical tradition created a living library of technique, one that could adapt and refine itself over centuries. We see this evolution clearly in the pyramids of Egypt, where the alignment of earlier structures, while impressive, shows slight deviations. By the time of the Great Pyramid, that error had been virtually eliminated, a testament to generations of masters subtly improving their methods, correcting tiny flaws, and passing forward a more perfect understanding. The survival of this precision across dynasties, through political upheavals and changing kings, speaks to the power of the guild and the workshop. The community of builders protected its secrets, ensuring that the sacred science of alignment remained unbroken. This human element transforms the story from one of anonymous labor to one of cultivated genius. The monuments were not built by a faceless multitude, but by a lineage of brilliant artisans, each standing on the shoulders of those who came before. To formalize this hard-won knowledge, specific tools emerged from the tradition, becoming the physical symbols of the master's art. Among the most elegant were the Merkhet and the Bay. The master's toolkit held instruments of elegant simplicity. Among the most sophisticated were the Egyptian Merkhet and its companion, the Bay. The Merkhet was a narrow, notched palm rib with a weighted plumb line hanging from one end. Its partner, the bay, was another palm rib with a vertical slit cut into it. Together, they formed a rudimentary yet astonishingly effective transit instrument for tracking the stars. An astronomer priest would hold the bay vertically, peering through its slit to sight a specific star. His assistant would stand at a distance, holding the Merkhet so its plumb line hung perfectly vertical. By aligning the sighting slit of the bay with both the star and the taut string of the Merkhet, they could mark the precise moment that star crossed the local meridian, the imaginary north-south line in the sky. By observing the transits of different circumpolar stars as they rotated around the celestial pole, they could triangulate the position of true north with incredible accuracy, all under the cover of darkness. This was a monumental leap in technique. It freed alignment from the sun's schedule, allowing for work to continue after sunset, and more importantly, providing a celestial cross-check against solar methods. The consistency achieved by comparing star-based north with sun-based east-west lines is what gave the Great Pyramid its legendary precision. Tomb paintings and surviving artifacts show these tools being used in ceremonies for stretching the cord, a ritual that marked the foundation of a new temple. This illustrates a critical evolution, the transformation of an observational principle into a dedicated, specialized technology. The Merkhet and Bay were not just tools, they were the physical embodiment of generations of accumulated sky watching, refined into a portable, repeatable practice. This drive to codify celestial knowledge into precise instruments was a global phenomenon. We see a parallel in the later Greek Dioptra, a more complex sighting tube used for both astronomy and land surveying. Each culture, in its own way, sought to bridge the gap between the infinite heavens and the finite line they needed to draw upon the earth. Yet even with these refined instruments, a final, daunting challenge remained, one of simple, overwhelming physics. The master's toolkit was evolving from celestial observation into terrestrial engineering. In the classical world of Greece and Rome, the principles of the rope and the gnomon were refined into specialized instruments designed to conquer distance and geography. The Greek Dioptra stands as a landmark in this evolution. Imagine a sighting tube mounted on a flat, graduated disc that could rotate and tilt. This device, a direct ancestor of the modern theodolite, allowed a surveyor to measure horizontal and vertical angles with unprecedented accuracy. No longer limited to simple cardinal lines, an engineer could now precisely map the slope of a hillside, calculate the height of a distant wall, or chart the winding path for an aqueduct across miles of uneven ground. It transformed alignment from a two-dimensional art into a three-dimensional science, enabling infrastructure that could defy the landscape itself. For the Romans, masters of empire and order, the essential tool was the Groma. This was a beautifully simple device, a vertical pole with a horizontal crossarm. From the end of each arm hung a plumb line, creating a suspended cross of perfect verticals. By sighting along these weighted strings, a Roman surveyor or agrimensor could rapidly establish perfect right angles across a vast field. It was the 3-4-5 triangle principle mechanized, the cord replaced by gravity's unwavering pull. With a Groma, the rigid grid of a military camp or the sprawling street plan of a new city could be stamped onto the earth with relentless efficiency. These tools did not appear out of thin air. They were the logical, brilliant progression from the knotted cords and star-sighting rods of earlier ages. They represent a shift from aligning with cosmic forces to mastering the earthly plane, from building monuments to the gods to building the arteries of an empire, roads, aqueducts, and cities that demanded a new kind of precision. While they postdate the pyramids and Stonehenge, their legacy is a direct line in humanity's unbroken quest to measure the world. This knowledge, preserved and transmitted through the fall of empires, would eventually fuel the cartographic revolutions of the Renaissance, proving that the drive for precision is itself a timeless constant. Yet even the finest brass Dioptra or perfectly balanced Groma was useless if the ground itself would not cooperate. The true test of an ancient engineer's genius was not just in the tool he held, but in how he listened to the very earth beneath his feet. The landscape itself became a sacred blueprint. Ancient engineers possessed a profound sixth principle, one that moved beyond imposing geometry upon the earth to listening to its existing language. They learned to leverage the natural landmarks and geology around them, incorporating mountain peaks, distinctive river bends, and unique rock outcrops directly into their alignments. This was not merely a labor-saving trick, though it certainly reduced the need for vast artificial sightlines. It was a way to weave their structures into the very fabric of the place, honoring the spiritual significance of the land while achieving breathtaking precision. The result was a symbiotic architecture where the built and the born environments became a single, harmonious expression. High in the Andes, the citadel of Machu Picchu stands as the ultimate testament to this philosophy. Its buildings and plazas are not haphazardly placed. They are carefully oriented to frame the surrounding sacred peaks, known as apus. The Temple of the Sun aligns its windows to catch the first rays of the solstice sun as it rises over specific mountain summits. The Teotihuacan stone, often called a hitching post for the sun, has angles that correspond to the cardinal directions and the sun's zenith passages. Here, the architecture does not dominate the landscape. It converses with it, using the immutable positions of the mountains as permanent celestial markers. This created a living calendar and a sacred space in one, where the sun's journey was marked not by human-made instruments alone, but by the timeless horizon the gods had provided. This practice echoes across the world. In the British Isles, many Neolithic stone circles and solitary standing menhirs are positioned with sightlines to notches or peaks on distant hills. Research suggests these horizon features were used to mark the extreme rising and setting points of the sun or moon during solstices and lunar standstills. By simply placing a stone to frame that specific notch, generations of observers could track the cycles of time with unwavering accuracy. The environment provided a ready-made, infinitely stable surveying tool. This holistic approach reveals a mindset where the land was not a blank slate, but a partner in creation. It speaks to an intimate, generational knowledge of place where every hill had a name and every alignment told a story of celestial relationships. This deep reverence for natural geometry would reach its grandest scale not in the placement of a single temple, but in the foundational plan of an entire city, where the order of the heavens was mapped onto the chaos of the earth to create a mirror of the cosmos for the living. The principles of sacred geometry found their ultimate expression not in a single temple, but in the grand design of an entire city. From the Indus Valley to the highlands of Mexico, ancient planners demonstrated that the most profound alignment of all was the ordering of human society itself, using the cosmos as their blueprint. The meticulously planned streets of Mohenjo-Daro, laid out in a near-perfect grid aligned to the cardinal directions, speak of a civilization obsessed with order. This was not merely for efficient drainage or traffic. It was a physical manifestation of a cosmic worldview, where the harmony of the heavens was reflected in the straight lines and right angles of daily life. Every brick, every well, every granary was part of a larger geometric harmony, ensuring the city itself became a machine for living in balance. The scale of this ambition is almost incomprehensible, requiring not just a master surveyor, but generations of them, all adhering to the same sacred plan over centuries. Using the rope and peg method, teams would have stretched their alignment cords across vast, empty plains, constantly checking and rechecking angles over kilometers to ensure that a street begun by a grandfather would meet perfectly with a plaza finished by his grandson. This was a covenant with the future, written in mud brick and stone. but perhaps no city on Earth embodies this urban cosmology more completely than Teotihuacan. Its central artery, the Street of the Dead, does not run true north-south. Instead, it deviates by 15.5 degrees east of north. For decades, this puzzled archaeologists. Was it a surveying error on a colossal scale? The answer revealed a deeper intention. This precise alignment likely targeted the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster, a group of stars deeply significant in Mesoamerican mythology, or perhaps a specific sacred mountain on the horizon. The entire metropolis, with its Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon, was laid out as a permanent map of the heavens, a terrestrial mirror of a celestial order. To walk its streets was to traverse a mythic landscape, with every ritual procession along the Street of the Dead reenacting a cosmic journey. This urban alignment served a powerful triple purpose. It organized the flow of people, goods, and water with mathematical efficiency. It regulated the ceremonial calendar, tying public rituals to solar, lunar, and stellar events. And above all, it displayed the overwhelming power of the ruling ideology, proving that its leaders could command not just people, but the very orientation of the world. The city grid was the ultimate tool of civilization, a constant, silent reminder that everyone within it lived under a divinely sanctioned order. This mastery of space on an urban scale represents the pinnacle of ancient engineering philosophy. Yet it raises a compelling counterpoint. What happened when the sacred site was not on a flat, open plain, but clinging to a cliff face or buried within a labyrinth of caves? The true test of an engineer's skill came not in the ordered city, but in the chaotic wilderness. Their mastery of urban grids met its ultimate test in the sheer, vertical chaos of the Andes Mountains. Here, the Inca engineers confronted a landscape that defied every conventional rule of geometry, where flat plains were a fantasy and the horizon was a jagged line of snow-capped peaks. Yet they did not fight the mountains, they learned their language. At sites like Sacsayhuaman above Cusco, they constructed colossal zigzagging walls from stones so perfectly fitted that not a blade of grass can slip between them. These walls do not follow a straight cardinal line. Instead, they flow with the natural contours of the hill, creating a structure that appears to grow directly from the bedrock itself. This was alignment of a different order, one that harmonized human design with the immutable shape of the earth. The precision was not sacrificed, it was transformed. Each massive block was painstakingly shaped to lock with its neighbors, creating a monolithic form that could withstand earthquakes and centuries of erosion. The result is an engineering marvel that feels both impossibly precise and organically natural, a testament to the principle that true alignment sometimes means following the curve of the land rather than imposing a rigid grid upon it. To achieve this on such treacherous slopes, they adapted the universal tools of the ancient world. They certainly used the trusted knotted cord, the quipu, though primarily for record-keeping, and they employed similar rope geometry for layout. But their true leveling instrument was once again water. They carved intricate networks of stone channels and used portable water-filled troughs to transfer a level benchmark across dizzying changes in elevation. Before a single terrace wall was built, surveyors would have established a series of level points along the mountainside using these water channels, creating a stepped series of horizontal plains. These terraces were far more than farmland. They were the foundational grid for the entire site, providing flat, stable platforms from which all other alignments could be measured. A terrace high on a ridge could become an astronomical observatory, its edge carefully positioned to frame the winter solstice sunrise over a specific distant pass. At Ollantaytambo, the monumental stone structures are oriented with exacting precision, their facades and doorways aligned to cardinal points and solar events, proving that even on a 45-degree slope, the Inca could make the heavens and the earth agree. Nowhere is this sophisticated adaptation more clear than at Machu Picchu. Here, the entire citadel is a dialogue between architecture and astronomy, meticulously planned to account for a complex, obstructed horizon. The Torion, or Temple of the Sun, features a window that is not aligned to a pure cardinal direction, but to the specific point on the ridge where the sun rises on the June solstice. Another window in the Temple of the Three Windows frames the rising sun on the equinox. The Intihuatana stone, the so-called hitching post of the sun, is carved so that its shadows precisely mark these same solar events. To achieve this, the builders had to calculate not just the sun's abstract path, but its visible path from that exact location, accounting for the towering peaks of Huayna Picchu and Machu Picchu mountain that framed their sky. This required advanced, on-site observation over many seasons. They likely used temporary stone markers or wooden posts to track the sun's shifting risings, slowly refining their measurements before committing the final, immovable stonework. This process reveals the indispensable role of patient, iterative refinement. Their techniques were not pulled from a single, perfect manual. They were honed through generations of trial and error, observation and correction. Each site was a lesson that informed the next, a cumulative science written into the mountains themselves. Their resilience in the face of such formidable geography forces a humbling question for our own time. Equipped with satellites and lasers, could we replicate their harmony with the land, or have we forgotten how to listen to the contours of the earth? Perfection was a moving target, reached not in a single bold stroke but through generations of patient adjustment. The seamless alignments we marvel at today were often the final, polished result of a long, iterative process, a slow dance of observation, correction, and accumulated wisdom. Archaeologists have uncovered the quiet evidence of this refinement. At some pyramid sites, the foundational layers of stone reveal slight but deliberate shifts in their positioning, as if the builders paused, reassessed their celestial bearings, and made a subtle course correction before continuing upward. Individual stones in ancient walls sometimes show chisel marks where they were carefully trimmed and repositioned to achieve a truer line. These are not signs of failure, but of a rigorous, living science. They tell us the builders were not just executing a rigid plan, they were actively monitoring their work against the sky, using the sun and stars as their constant quality control. This commitment to incremental improvement created a powerful feedback loop across centuries. We can see this learning curve etched in stone across the Egyptian desert. The earliest major pyramids, while monumental, exhibit slight deviations in their cardinal orientation, but with each successive project, the precision sharpened. By the time of the Great Pyramid's construction, the margin of error had been virtually eliminated. This progression reveals a culture that was systematically perfecting its craft, treating each new monument not as a replica, but as an opportunity to refine the methods of the last. The knowledge gained from a slight misalignment at one site became the lesson that ensured perfection at the next. This trial and error approach fundamentally reshapes our understanding of these projects. It shows that ancient engineering was a dynamic, empirical practice. It was less about following a secret, unchanging formula, and more about cultivating a responsive, observant relationship with the physical and celestial world. The master builders were scientists in the truest sense, forming a hypothesis based on the stars, testing it with stone and shadow, and then refining their theory for the next generation. This cumulative process of getting ever closer to true north or the perfect solstice sunrise may have yielded something even more profound than physical precision. Over centuries, as the measurements became more exact, the relationships between a structure's dimensions, its alignments, and the mathematical constants of the universe began to converge in startling ways. The relentless pursuit of celestial harmony may have inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, encoded a deeper language into the stones themselves. The stones may have been more than markers, they could have been a permanent library. Beyond the clear alignments to solstices and stars, some researchers see a deeper, more speculative layer of meaning encoded in these ancient sites, a hidden language of mathematics and long-term astronomy. This idea suggests that the precise placement of monuments was not just for ritual or calendar purposes, but to preserve complex scientific data in the most durable format imaginable, stone itself. The most famous example of this theory involves the three Great Pyramids of Giza. Their layout on the ground is argued by some to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt in the constellation of Orion, a pattern sacred to the ancient Egyptians as the celestial home of the god Osiris. When the positions are compared, the correlation is striking, though not perfectly exact, and it remains a hotly debated topic among archaeologists and astronomers. The theory extends further, proposing that the sizes of the pyramids might correspond to the relative brightness of those stars, or that the nearby Nile River was intentionally meant to represent the Milky Way in this grand cosmic map. Whether this was a deliberate act of celestial cartography or a compelling coincidence born of a shared cultural reverence for Orion is a question that may never be fully settled. Yet the very possibility opens a fascinating door. It implies that the builders possessed not only observational skill, but a desire to freeze a specific moment of the sky in time. This leads to an even more profound concept, the precession of the equinoxes. This is a slow, 26,000-year wobble in Earth's axis that gradually shifts the backdrop of stars against which the sun rises on the equinox. Detecting this incredibly slow cycle requires meticulous records over centuries. Some researchers speculate that the changing alignments of temples over millennia, or the specific orientation of certain shafts within the Great Pyramid, might encode knowledge of this grand celestial cycle. If true, it would mean ancient astronomers were thinking on a timescale that stretches beyond empires, beyond entire civilizations, planning structures that would serve as milestones in a cosmic journey they themselves would never see completed. This transforms the monuments from static tombs or temples into dynamic clocks measuring time in units of millennia. The idea of a stone library is powerful because it speaks to a fundamental human anxiety, the fear that knowledge will be lost. In a world before paper was common and digital storage unthinkable, what better way to preserve your most important discoveries than to build them into the landscape on a scale that could not be erased? The alignment then becomes a kind of permanent data storage, a message to the future written in geometry and celestial relationships. Modern technology is now the key trying to unlock this potential code. Archaeoastronomers use sophisticated software to recreate ancient skies and precisely calculate alignments that would have been invisible for centuries due to precession. Three-dimensional laser scanning can detect subtle deviations in angles and proportions that might hold mathematical significance. Each new scan, each new simulation, is like turning a page in a book we are only just learning to read. This speculative layer does not replace the practical explanations of ropes and shadows, but it adds a rich dimension of mystery. It invites us to wonder if, in their relentless pursuit of harmony with the cosmos, the ancients left behind a puzzle we are still piecing together, a testament written not in words but in the silent, enduring relationship between stone and star. The silent claims of the stones are now being interrogated by beams of light and orbiting satellites. Modern archaeology has entered an era of unprecedented precision, where the celestial intentions of ancient builders can be measured, confirmed, and understood with a clarity our ancestors could never have envisioned. Tools like laser theodolites and ground-penetrating radar allow researchers to map a site down to the millimeter, creating digital twins of monuments that can be analyzed from every angle. With GPS providing a fixed global coordinate system, we can calculate the exact azimuth of a temple doorway or the precise orientation of a pyramid's base. This technological lens has transformed speculation into data, offering empirical answers to age-old questions. At Newgrange in Ireland, a 5,000-year-old passage tomb, laser scans confirmed that its narrow entrance corridor is perfectly aligned to capture the rising sun on the winter solstice, flooding the inner chamber with a golden beam of light for just 17 minutes. This was not a hopeful guess. It was a deliberate, engineered phenomenon now verified by science. Similarly, sophisticated surveys at Stonehenge have corroborated alignments not just to the sun, but to the extreme rising and setting points of the moon during its 18.6-year cycle, revealing a lunar calendar of staggering complexity carved into the Salisbury Plain. This verification does more than satisfy our curiosity. It validates the ancient intellect. It proves that the alignments we theorized about for centuries were indeed real, purposeful, and achieved with a consistency that commands respect. Yet this same technology also introduces a note of humility. Precise measurements sometimes reveal that a structure is a fraction of a degree off its presumed perfect alignment. Before we call it an error, we must account for the Earth itself as a living, shifting entity. Tectonic plate movement, known as continental drift, can slowly rotate a landmass over millennia. Soil erosion or seismic activity can cause foundational stones to settle or tilt by almost imperceptible amounts over centuries. What appears to us as a slight misalignment today might have been flawless when the builders laid the final stone. This realization reframes the achievement, suggesting their original accuracy could have been even more breathtaking than what we now observe. The modern verification process thus becomes a powerful bridge between eras. It connects the patient star watcher with his knotted cord to the archaeologist with her tablet computer, united by the same fundamental quest to decode the language of the past. This scientific perspective gives us the tools to separate enduring truth from persistent myth, allowing us to appreciate the genuine marvels without the need for supernatural explanation. The story of ancient alignments has, over time, been wrapped in layers of modern myth. Popular tales often leap to explanations involving lost civilizations with impossible technology or even visitors from other worlds. These stories, while captivating, do a curious disservice to the very people they aim to glorify. They imply that the genuine achievements of our ancestors were somehow beyond human capability, that a culture without silicon chips or steel could not possibly have possessed a genius of its own. The truth, uncovered by careful archaeology, is far more inspiring. It reveals a profound human intellect, one that used patience and observation to decode the universe with the tools at hand. Take the often repeated claim that all the pyramids of Egypt are perfectly aligned to true north. When measured with modern instruments, we find they are not. The Great Pyramid is astonishingly close, but others show slight, consistent deviations. These variances are not evidence of failure, but of humanity. They match the expected margin of error for the methods we believe they used, like the Merkhet and the Gnomon, over the course of a long construction project. This makes the achievement more real, not less. It was the work of fallible, brilliant people getting it almost impossibly right. To prove this point, experimental archaeologists have taken these theories into the field. Using nothing but reconstructed ropes, wooden stakes, and buckets of water, teams have successfully recreated the geometric layouts of ancient sites. They have used the Indian circle method to find true east-west lines, and the 3-4-5 triangle to lay out perfect squares, all under the open sky. These experiments consistently show that with skilled practitioners and meticulous repetition, the alignments we see in the archaeological record are not just possible, they are reproducible. This grounded perspective does not diminish the wonder, it redirects our awe to its proper source, the resourceful human mind. It honors the ancient engineer not as a recipient of alien gifts, but as a master of their environment, a patient scientist who listened to the stars and translated their message into stone. As we near the end of our exploration, this clarity allows us to see past the how and finally ask the deeper question: what profound cultural and spiritual urgency drove societies across the globe to invest such immense effort in this celestial conversation? These alignments were never just about angles on a compass. They were the physical expression of a civilization's deepest fears and highest hopes, a desperate and beautiful attempt to impose human meaning upon an unpredictable universe. The immense effort required, spanning decades and consuming the labor of thousands, only makes sense when we see the blueprint not as lines in the sand, but as a sacred contract. For the ancient Egyptians, the pyramid was a machine for resurrection. Its flawless northern alignment was a launch ramp, directing the pharaoh's soul to the imperishable stars that never set, the realm of eternal order. A misaligned pyramid risked a lost soul, a cosmic wrong that could unravel the very harmony between the gods and the land of Egypt. This was not a matter of aesthetics, it was a matter of cosmic security, a national project to ensure the continued favor of the gods and the stability of the kingdom itself. Every priest-astronomer checking a star's transit, every worker hauling a stone into its perfect place, was participating in a ritual that secured the future for everyone. Across the ocean, the motivation was similarly urgent but framed by a different celestial drama. In Mesoamerica, the sun was not a constant friend, but a deity that needed to be coaxed and strengthened. The great fear was that the sun might continue its southward journey after the winter solstice and vanish forever, plunging the world into eternal night. The pyramids at Teotihuacan and Chichen Itza, aligned to capture the solstice sun, were instruments of cosmic persuasion. By building a structure that precisely framed the sun at its weakest point, the community was performing an act of sympathetic magic, helping to pull the sun back northward, ensuring the return of spring, the rains, and the life-giving maize. A temple's alignment was a plea for survival, a stone prayer for the continuation of time itself. This spiritual imperative provided the incredible social fuel for these projects. It transformed back-breaking labor into an act of devotion, a communal service that promised divine reward. It justified the patient, generational transfer of knowledge from master to apprentice because the stakes were literally eternal. When we understand this, the precision stops being a cold technical marvel and becomes something profoundly human, a testament to shared belief. It shows us that the greatest engineering feats in history were often driven not by the desire for profit or power alone, but by a collective yearning to find our place in the cosmos, to speak to the gods in a language they would understand, the immutable language of mathematics and celestial motion. This transcendental purpose is what allowed these methods to endure, to be refined over centuries, and to leave a legacy so precise that we are still deciphering its intent today. Their quest for cosmic harmony ignited a chain of learning that would illuminate the centuries to come. The foundational principles those ancient engineers perfected, the marriage of celestial observation with geometric truth, did not vanish with their civilizations. Instead, they became a quiet inheritance passed down through generations of builders and thinkers, forming the bedrock upon which later ages would construct their own wonders. The master masons of Europe's great medieval cathedrals, aiming their spires toward heaven, relied on the very same tools, the gnomon's shadow and the taut cord, to lay out their monumental footprints and ensure their walls rose true. They were not rediscovering lost secrets, they were practicing a living tradition, one that stretched back to the pyramid builders. Centuries later, Renaissance scholars poring over the recovered texts of the Roman architect Vitruvius found meticulous descriptions of the Groma and Dioptra, instruments that formalized the principles of the rope and the water level. This rediscovery fueled a new revolution in cartography, engineering, and art, proving that the ancient drive for precision was a flame that could be rekindled. This unbroken thread reveals a profound truth about human innovation. Our greatest leaps forward are rarely born from entirely new ideas, but from building upon simple, timeless principles with renewed vision. The ancient engineers' methodology, grounded in observing nature and using minimal tools with maximal skill, represents a pinnacle of sustainable design. In an age of complex machinery and digital dependency, their work offers a powerful lesson in resilience. The techniques that aligned cities and temples required no fossil fuels, no fragile supply chains, only human ingenuity, careful observation, and materials provided by the local environment. This makes their knowledge profoundly relevant for communities today facing resource constraints or seeking to build in harmony with their landscape, not in opposition to it. Studying these methods is more than an archaeological exercise. It is a conversation with some of history's most brilliant practical philosophers. It challenges our modern assumption that sophistication requires complexity. Their legacy prompts a humbling reflection. Equipped with satellites and supercomputers, have we retained their profound patience, their deep listening to the natural world, and their ability to see a line to the stars in a bucket of still water? Our modern world hums with digital precision, yet this very dependency reveals a subtle vulnerability. The ancient mastery of ropes and shadows offers more than historical curiosity. It provides a vital counterpoint to our high-tech age, reminding us that true resilience often lies in foundational skills. In regions where satellite signals fail or power grids are fragile, the principles of solar sighting and water leveling are not obsolete. They become essential tools for community-led construction and disaster recovery. After an earthquake or flood, when advanced surveying equipment may be unavailable, a simple water-filled hose can re-establish a level foundation for a school or clinic, using only local materials and human knowledge. This is not about rejecting technology, but about building a more robust toolkit, one that layers satellite data with the timeless, battery-free certainty of a plumb line. The ancient approach champions adaptability, using what the immediate environment provides, whether it is stones from a nearby quarry or the unwavering horizon as a celestial guide. This philosophy directly informs modern sustainable architecture, where buildings are designed to work with local climate and topography rather than fighting against them with energy-intensive solutions. A structure aligned to capture passive solar heating, much like a temple aligned to the solstice sun, reduces its reliance on external power, embodying an efficiency that is both ancient and urgently contemporary. Beyond the technical, the holistic vision of these early planners challenges the fragmentation of modern development. They did not see a building as separate from its landscape or its cultural purpose. The alignment was physical, spiritual, and social all at once. This integrated thinking offers a powerful model for today's urban planners, urging designs that respect ecological corridors, honor community history, and create spaces that foster human connection, not just maximize density. By revisiting these low-tech methods, we engage in more than historical preservation. We rediscover a practical wisdom for an uncertain future. It is a wisdom that values keen observation over blind data streams, that finds elegance in simplicity, and that understands the deepest form of resilience is a profound harmony with the world as it is. This brings us to a final, unifying thought, a synthesis of all we have explored about the stones, the stars, and the enduring human mind. The true marvel lies not in any single technique, but in the elegant web they wove together. This was not a checklist of isolated skills, astronomy here, geometry there. It was a seamless, living system where each discipline informed and reinforced the others. The celestial observation gave purpose to the geometric layout. The precise tools made the spiritual vision physically possible, and the communal belief provided the enduring will to see it through. The Egyptian Merkhet, the Roman Groma, and the Inca's water channels were not competing inventions. They were regional dialects of the same universal language, spoken by cultures who all looked up at the same stars and asked the same fundamental questions about order and place. This interconnectedness is what makes their achievement so resilient and so instructive. It shows that monumental precision was never the product of a lone genius with a secret, but the fruit of a cumulative, collaborative intellect refined over generations. A master astronomer's star data was useless without the rope knotter's perfect triangle, and the surveyor's perfect line meant nothing without the stonemason who could set a block to within a hair's breadth. This was a symphony of specialized knowledge, all playing from the same cosmic score. What we witness across continents, then, is a beautiful tapestry of human ingenuity, each thread a different color but all woven from the same fundamental fibers: observation, patience, and a deep desire to build meaning into the world. The pyramids of Giza, the lines of Nazca, and the temples of Angkor Wat are not separate mysteries. They are variations on a profound theme, proving that when faced with the same universal constraints, the human mind, in its glorious diversity, finds a multitude of paths to the same breathtaking end. They stand as collective monuments, not to kings or gods alone, but to the enduring power of shared knowledge and communal effort. This perspective transforms them from distant, silent ruins into active conversations with our own potential. They ask us a quiet, persistent question. In our age of fragmented specialization and fleeting attention, what could we build if we too combined our knowledge with such patience and unified purpose? Their legacy is a quiet challenge written in stone and shadow. We have followed the path from starlit desert plains to misty mountain citadels, tracing the invisible lines ancient engineers drew between earth and sky. We saw how the sun's solstice pause became a sacred east-west marker, how a knotted cord could guarantee a perfect right angle, and how still water in a trough established a level plain across miles. These were not primitive guesses, but refined applications of astronomy, geometry, and profound patience, all driven by a cultural imperative to build in harmony with the cosmos. The precision of the Great Pyramid, the celestial choreography of Kukulcán, and the terraced harmony of Machu Picchu all speak the same truth. Sophistication is not defined by the complexity of your tools, but by the depth of your understanding. These builders listened to the world, learned its rhythms, and translated that knowledge into monuments that have endured as questions for millennia. Their work forces us to reconsider what real progress looks like. In an age of instant digital calculation, their achievements stand as a testament to the power of observation, the resilience of knowledge passed hand to hand, and the incredible results of unified human purpose. They remind us that sometimes the most advanced technology is a keen eye, a taut cord, and the willingness to watch the stars turn. So the next time you see an image of an ancient wonder, look beyond the sheer scale. See the embedded line to the north, the intended catch of the equinox light, the silent conversation with the horizon. Within those stones rests a library of human ingenuity, waiting for anyone curious enough to read it. If this journey into the past has shifted your perspective, let us know what amazed you most in the comments below. Subscribe to keep exploring the great mysteries of history and never stop asking how, for in questioning the wonders left behind, we often discover the best of what we can become.